Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello, welcome to Talks with Tracy. I'm your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you all so much for being here today and viewing, taking the time to listen to our show. I appreciate every single one of you who does so, and I also appreciate Bold Brave Television Network for having me always. So today I just always have the best time visiting with Ash Benavides. We have recently done a couple shows. We did Talks with Tracy number 39 and number 40 together. And Ash, she shared more of her experience with childhood trauma and adulthood trauma. And then she also shared her experience with all of that trauma coming together with a traumatic brain injury, what that looks like, what that feels like. I've had a really good time doing that on those shows. If you haven't seen them already, I encourage you to check them out. She just does such a great job of sharing her experience. It's truly inspirational. And she even has found a way to find a silver lining to it all and maintain a positive attitude, an attitude about growth and expansion that is really quite amazing. So all of this discussion that Ash and I have had has generated viewer questions. So today, Ash and I, we're going to spend some time doing our best to answer viewer questions. Of course, I will be coming from the perspective of having 30 plus years experience as a mental health therapist, a clinician, and I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. I love to do that. And I have had my fair share, trust me, of experience with narcissistic people in my lifetime. And of course, Ash, she has her lifetime experience as well. And in my opinion, her lifetime experience, it really just makes her an expert on narcissistic abuse. She is so relatable with her experience. I love that about her. And, she's just the kind of person who, if you really want like a no bullshit kind of talk about what this feels like, what toxic relationships feels like, what narcissism is, she is absolutely your girl. So again, so relatable. She's done that deep dive into her own emotional experience that is so very important for all of us to do to put an end to our suffering. And she's also spent a considerable amount of time educating herself on narcissistic abuse, which makes her the very perfect person to answer these questions with me today. And she is here. So I'm so very thankful to have her here today. Please join me in welcoming the beautiful and amazing Ash Benavides.
Hi.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So, Ash, we tried to do this show a couple weeks ago, right? We were
Yeah,
all lined up to do this show. And then the night before you were scheduled to be on, you got your vehicle broken into?
I did.
Yes. And your
Yeah,
phone
my phone
stolen.
taken. Yeah, and even with the microchip, or you can lock your phone remotely, and it still made an issue for it. It's useless at that point, but I got a new phone, and we're good to go. So,
Yay. Well, thank you. I'm so glad you recovered from that. So sorry that happened to you.
well, that's
It's
okay.
a real pain. Yeah. Yeah. Things happen, huh? So,
Yeah.
yeah, our shows that we did, it really generated some great questions. And I think today I'll just start throwing them out there. I don't know that we'll be able to get to all of the questions, but we'll do our best to get through them today. So, let's just start with a question that relates directly to your personal experience as a child being raised by a narcissistic parent. You've shared that with us. Uh, this viewer question is, knowing what you know now about narcissism, is there anything that would have been helpful to you to know in your early years that would have, helped you as far as dealing with having a narcissistic father? Maybe like when you were 9 or 10 or something like that. Um, Anything that had you known would have helped you with that experience?
I mean, I think the biggest problem that I'm learning is that the term narcissist and just like toxic people in general, it's more come to a limelight now, right? So back in the
Mm,
day, as a child, like the state was involved. There were cries out for help, but in those times, no one seemed to do anything about issues with a family. They usually put it on the child. So it's really hard to
mm,
say that if the knowledge I had now in my older years was there when I was young would be even useful, just because of the simple fact that, was that knowledge as well known back then in the 80s and
mm,
90s as it is in 2024? I mean, unfortunately, I don't think it was. I think back then
mhm,
there's been a lot of people on both sides that were abused, and end up being, like we've talked about, they can end up being a narcissist themselves, that went under the radar, unfortunately.
mm.
And now we have
Yeah.
such a more grasp on mental health than we've ever had before. So it's hard to know. I think that if I could have had a do-over, it would have been finding out from an aunt of mine that she tried to raise me. She asked my dad if she could raise me when I was about 6 years of age. She knew that there was something going on in the household. And I just wish that the people that did see the physical signs of abuse,
Mm,
to my brothers and stuff, I wish they would have intervened, but they didn't. I feel like back then it was sort of, it went by the wayside. So I think that
mm,
when there's a cry out for help, whether we don't do as many check-ins as we do now, right? Now people
mm,
ask each other, "Hey, are you doing okay?" 30 something years ago, nobody cared. So it's hard to
mm.
know, like, if I would have been able to, if I had the knowledge that I have now. I mean, I'm grateful I do now, but absolutely, if I would have known what I know now at some point, it would have saved me 10, 15 years of more chaos.
Right. So I love the point you're making about the importance of listening to children when they are
Yeah.
expressing that something is wrong. And I would say even today, it's very common for people to just kind of turn away from situations like that because they don't know how to intervene, they're afraid to intervene, whatever their reasons are. But absolutely listen to our kids and their experience and give them opportunities to share their experience. And when they are talking about emotional abuse, to be willing to step in and help them with that situation. I know that, like with Child Protective Services, my experience with working in that field, it's really hard, even in our court systems, to prove emotional abuse, and that's what happens to children who are raised by narcissistic parents. It's emotionally abusive, and
Right.
so I agree with what you're saying to listen and really be willing to step up in those situations. So, um, in the situation that many children are in, being raised by a narcissistic parent, I'm thinking that maybe some of the things that would be helpful as far as educating them on this experience, it I believe in a message of, it's not you, it's them.
Right.
So if you were raising a child with a narcissistic parent, which I know you're not, but um, in that circumstance, I'm thinking that might be a message that a non narcissistic parent or a non toxic parent could give to their child repeatedly, because children are famous for um, taking on responsibility for all things that go wrong, and
Right.
they absorb it like a sponge, and they develop beliefs that they're failing, that they're not enough, that they're not good enough. So what do you think about that message? It's them, it's not you.
So I think that is a great way. And then if we look at children, because I've worked with children so much, um you're the child's still gonna not understand. Like, how do you tell that to a 4-year-old, right? I mean,
Right.
if a 4-year-old is trying to, if we go back into a narcissistic parent, sorry, here, let me adjust this, relationship with a child, that child is trying to get the affection of the narcissist, right? So in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of my dad, even as a little girl, I was striving for that relationship. And it was always, I mean, as we look into the narcissistic personality, unless it benefits them, well, they're not necessarily giving it back, right? They can give it back, but there's a stipulation, right?
Mm.
So it can confuse a child. And that's the downfall, is like, do we use kids books? I mean, do we really push the education kind of like a language on a child early on? Because I think that just that term of like, it's not you, it's them. If I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I'm 4 and someone told me that, I'd be like, well, I want them to love me, and I want to be a part of, why are they treating me like that? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't allow for a young mind to completely understand why that person is the way they are. I think as you get older, yes. But I think a
Right.
young child, there's no way. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
young child wants that safety from their mother and father. Their little tiny circle is so important to them, and I
Right.
think it's really a tricky ground. How do we help small
Mm-hmm.
kids avoid toxic relationships or end up being a toxic person themselves? I mean, that's, you
Right.
know,
Yeah, it really creates the I don't want to say burden, but the responsibility largely lies on the non-toxic parent
yes,
um, to fill that child up with the opposite messages. Those messages of, you are lovable, you are wonderful, like you are enough, kind of um, multiple repeated experience where you're enjoying your child, where you're making them feel like they are loved and adored, that adoration, those kind of interactions that healthy parents have with their children. It's kind of like the antivenom or something, right? It's the the means by which their psychological damage will be mitigated in these kind of situations, because so many times there's situations where either you're still with the toxic parent or you're divorced from, but that toxic parent will still have time with this child, especially for, in a divorce with a narcissistic parent, when they feel like their child is their property
right,
and, is there to serve them. They're not going to just let go of um, custody of that child, right? they're going to
right.
they're going to fight fiercely for it for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, just trying to take the I think with older children too, we can help our children understand this lack of empathy thing that happens with the toxic parent. That um, that's a really hard thing for children to deal with. I was working, even just this week, I was working with a child who has one narcissistic parent and one healthy parent. And she was having trouble at school. And so she called her mom, who is the non toxic parent, and her mom didn't answer. She was at work. She wasn't able to answer right away. So she was having a meltdown at school. So she called her dad, who has narcissistic traits. She reached out to him. And then in therapy, she was talking about that. And she says, "My dad sucks at comforting people." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, tell me about that." And she tells me this kind of conversation that, just um, invalidated her experience, basically told her to get over it and go back to school. That's that lack of empathy. So
right,
helping
right.
helping our kids to understand that characteristic, I think, is helpful for, you know, kind of as a safeguard, or building up some armor, some protection
Yeah, I
against.
think too, it takes a
Yeah.
village, right? So if you
Mm,
are actively involved in a child's life or an auntie or a friend of the family, and you know that they're in a toxic environment, if you can plant those seeds of love, if you can show a
mm,
child love, even if you're not related to them, and self-worth and encouragement, you'd be
mm-hmm.
surprised a child will naturally gravitate towards that person. So
Oh,
I think having
absolutely.
a strong support system to outweigh the negative interactions is huge and would
Hmm.
be probably the best route to go.
Absolutely. So again, love what you're saying because it is those healthy, kind, loving, nurturing relationships that will help to mitigate the long-term psychological effects of being raised by a narcissistic parent. So it's already time to take a commercial break. We've only answered one question. So when we come back, we're going to continue answering questions. Ash, thank you for that. So you're watching Talks with Tracy. It's time to take a commercial break. We will be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hello, welcome back to Talks with Tracy, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. I'm here with Ash Benavides. Today we're answering viewer questions. So last segment, Ash, we were talking about things from, our narcissistic parenting in childhood. So I'd like to jump right into adulthood today. So one of the questions from a viewer is, looking back to when you were, heavily involved in romantic relationships, maybe, ooh,
Sorry.
maybe your maybe your most recent relationship and partner, before you even were introduced to the term narcissism, is there anything that your friends could have said to make you aware of that situation you were in, like to kind of bring your awareness around to the the toxicity of your relationship? These are difficult conversations to have
Yeah.
with people you care about.
Yeah, it's interesting because my first partner that I was with, my longest relationship, a friend did say something. Her
Oh.
words were, "I think you're with a narcissist." Because I was
Mm.
so emotionally worked up and so confused and so hysterical and so, I was a
Mm.
mess. And when I shared what was happening, I think it takes a person who knows, right? It takes a person who knows what a narcissistic abusive person is like, or a toxic
Mm.
person. to say, oh, something's not right in your relationship, because our society already is very detached. I know we've talked about this before, that
Mm-hmm.
we kind of live in a world where no one's whistleblowing, no one's calling each other out. They're not being humane and helping each other. So I think that when someone comes to you and there's like emotional crisis, especially in a society where we're conditioned for physical violence, right? We'll red flag
Mm-hmm.
that. We'll be like, oh my gosh, this person's abusive. Let's get her out of the home, him out of the home. But we're not conditioned to look for the signs of emotional abuse. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, the last partner I was with, there was some other things going on that were very concerning, that I did cry out for help. And it really felt like nobody cared. It wasn't
Oh.
until after things came out, and to be just fair, I mean, I'm not afraid to say, but it was sexual abuse. So
Mm.
whether you're a 5-year-old or an adult being sexually abused, if you're talking about these things, we need to start encouraging people to understand, to listen and ask questions, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't live in that society. So I realized in that time of that relationship, I complained and called so many people, and it
Mm.
did not, like, I don't think it registered, because we're so used to our little lives of what we got going on, that they didn't understand what was
Mm.
happening until after it was reported, and I started doing some, digging in deep, that it was, oh shoot, you did act really weird. Like, people are not trained to look for
Mm.
cues. And that is, again, a societal issue. This isn't just one or two people. This is our society. And,
Yeah.
I think the best thing that, if I created a world right now that was more adapt to helping others, whether the physical abuse, emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, is the option for free therapy, right? Like, there's the
Mm.
suicide hotlines, right? There needs to be more push for, like, hey, I'm so, like, if you had something, I'm Tracy, and if you need someone, here's my number, day and night.
Mm.
Because I don't think in our culture, our friends and our family really grasp abuse. We
Right.
just, it's not very many of us. I mean, I do, I'm sure you do, I'm sure other people do, ask questions, check in. It's
Mm.
just not part of our culture.
Right. And I think when people hear abuse, um, the word abuse, even people are like, well, is it abuse, or if he is he, or is she just an asshole? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
is it? And then even us in a relationship, we, as the non-toxic person with the toxic person, we fall into our own patterns of justifying and defending behavior that is absolutely unacceptable. We'll actually step in to start make excuses, and we justify, we normalize, we say, oh, well, that's just happening because, oh, he's not good at this. She gets really upset about things like that, and she doesn't really mean to. There's all sorts of things that we do ourselves. And then also when we go to other people and we say, hey, this happened, it's really upsetting, a lot of times the people we go to will invalidate our experience as well, even if they're not meaning to. Like I've heard lots of women who have been abused tell their story about how they've been told, oh, well, that's just how men are. Well, I guess that can be how men are if we allow them to be
Right.
that way and we accept that kind of behavior. Then yeah, also we've talked a lot about how our one of the rules of the mind is that our brains will be attracted to what is familiar with us. So if we've been raised in a toxic family, we'll gravitate towards what's familiar to us, whether it's good for us or not. So we ourselves, I think that's one of the ways we fall into patterns of justifying behaviors and treatment that is unacceptable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and I think that honestly, what I've learned in all of this, and if for viewers, is you're gonna have to go within yourself. If you if people learned how to listen to their intuition and their
Mm,
own response systems instead of externally placing it, we would all be doing a lot better. But we end up relying on
mm,
our communities or our family members. We have to learn to individualize our experience, meaning if I meet someone and I don't feel comfortable, I need to not go with it. Now, if I meet someone and they're great at love bombing, sure, ask your friends, have a barbecue, bring said partner over and avoid going down a road of mystery. But make sure they're people that can actually be proactive in your life. And again, we rely too much on outside sources of like, hey, if I reached out to a friend, like if something's wrong, then it's wrong. So
right. Right. And we have to have that love for our own selves to stand up for ourselves. I will say, too, that when we're in a toxic relationship, the toxic partner, they're often going to sabotage any kind of relationship that actually is one that will strengthen you and build you up. They'll
yeah,
not want that person in your life who is saying, "Hey, I don't think it's okay how you're being treated." They're going to be like, divide and conquer, get that person out because that person is threatening their supply, their situation that they're very comfortable in.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So it's
Yeah,
hard to
it's
keep those healthy friends in your life.
yeah, well, if you think of it in the sense, I saw a quote recently about a healed person or a person. I'm going to go with healing because I don't think you're ever done healing. Um
Mm-hmm.
but a person who's on that journey, like I've learned, you'd be shocked at the liquidation that you do in your life. You learn really
Mm-hmm.
quickly, even meeting new people, unhealthy mindsets, like you start to pick up cues all
Mm-hmm.
around you. And I think I've shared that with you. It's surprising how many people are not in a healthy mental mind space. If I want to make a rough guesstimate, 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 people are not doing okay. And that too, I mean, that's a large number. I mean, and some will look like it, right? Look at our
Mm-hmm.
external sources, look at our social media. People paint a
Mm-hmm.
picture that's not real. And so once you
Right.
start doing all that inner work, you start to realize that the people that in your life or that you meet might not be adequate to having
Mm.
relationships with.
Right, right. So, another viewer question is the question: can narcissistic people have empathy? I love this question as well. It kind of gets to what you're talking about right now. How at times a narcissistic person can look like they have empathy. Is that correct?
Yes, it's called false empathy.
Right, and false empathy happens on like a really good day for them when they're not
Right.
experiencing so much stress. But you mentioned in a different show that we did the rubber band effect. Can you just briefly explain that?
So narcissists like can absolutely be aware and get help for their behavior. They can shift. They can understand when they're doing things wrong to other people. The difference between a healthy person and a narcissist is a healthy person or a normal person's going to change, right? They're going to grow, they're going to change from it, they're going to make better decisions. Under pressure, the rubber band, you stretch that rubber band long enough, and if a narcissist experiences pressure or anything that makes them uncomfortable, it'll snap them right back into their behavior patterns that they've always done.
Hmm. Correct, and
And
I agree.
when we have the comment, does a narcissist have empathy? Yes, it's fake. Whatever it takes to love bomb you and bait you. I mean, my current relationship and I, we joke about it. Maybe we shouldn't, but we do. There are moments where he'll be like, I got to keep the love bombing up, sweetheart. And I'm like, oh God, like we find comedy in our past traumas with narcissistic people that we were with. And yes, a narcissist can show false empathy, meaning they're going to do whatever it takes to keep you baited. So if it means like, of course I love you, of course I'll do that, what you'll notice is they instantly change back to their normal behavior. So it's a false thing. It's not consistent. The one thing I've learned about narcissists and toxic people is they're consistently inconsistent.
Right. And when you're referring about snapping back to these traits that they have, I believe that snapping back is related to this, toxicity and narcissism being a character trait of theirs.
Yeah.
So, we have to remember it's no easier for them when they have these character traits. It's no easier for them to turn into a kind, loving, nurturing, empathetic person than it is for like me to turn into a person with no empathy, a person that's completely self-centered, all about myself, out to use people for my own good. I would have a really hard time changing over to that those personality traits, those characteristics, and it really is no easier for a narcissist to change to those healthier kind of characteristics. So something to keep in mind, and so that we don't end up in expectations of change that are unrealistic. It's kind of like that radical acceptance that we've talked about before. Radical acceptance is like, it is what it is. This is not going to change. We accept it. That isn't so that we just say, I'll be treated however this person wants to treat me. I'll just have to suck it up and deal with it. It's actually to take the responsibility off the victim for changing that, and then that person, the responsibility is off of them, placed where it belongs. And I know you like to talk about accountability, so we're actually going to take a brief commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So yeah, you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We will be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello, welcome back to Talks with Tracy, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. I am visiting with Ash Benavides today, and we are answering viewer questions. Thank you so much for being here, Ash. So before we get started on the next question, I just really want to take a moment to acknowledge just how incredibly painful toxic relationships can be. These are, we might, as we're talking about it, kind of laugh and share experience in a lighthearted way. But just so everybody out there knows, we absolutely know how very painful these relationships are, and how very difficult they are to get out of. They're incredibly painful, and for me, the whole process of leaving these relationships was incredibly frightening as well. But they really take an emotional toll on us. They take a physical toll on us, and they really require a lot of healing. So even though it may seem like a no-brainer, yeah, you're in a toxic relationship, get out, it's not always that easy. And I know people stay in relationships like this for many different reasons. I think the most common reason that I hear for people to stay in super unhealthy toxic relationships is because they don't want to split up their family. They don't want their children to be raised by divorced parents, to go between households. But really in the long run, what is which is better, for a child, giving them this example of living in toxic relationship, or really showing them that we don't have to tolerate toxic relationships, and we can move out of them and expect more for ourselves. It really is a difficult situation for a lot of people. So I just wanted to say that, because I want people to know that we understand how painful all of this is. So that brings me to our next viewer question. And that is, can you ever get used to it? Like, can you ever get used to being treated in these ways in a toxic relationship, stay in it and be okay? Again, because there's so many people who feel like that they don't have the option of leaving it. Can you ever get used to it and be okay?
I mean, I don't think anyone, if you're going to be in close proximity with a toxic person or a narcissist, I don't think it'll ever be okay.
Mm.
Your cortisol levels are going to go out the roof. Your hippocampus is going to be damaged. I mean, you can get by, sure, which is survival mode, which is no different than being like a wild animal. But do I think that you'll ever actually be okay in a narcissistic relationship
Mhm.
or an abusive, manipulative abuse? No, you can't, because everything you're already saying is going against it.
Mm.
I think I've said it several times before, is that people really have to be on the journey of healing who they are on the inside to get out of these things.
Mm.
For me to have broken up with 85-90% of the people in my life, including every single family member, mother, well, mother's
Ah.
now dead, father, cousins, I have nothing to do with my family,
Mm.
because I decided that my life happy and valued for myself was more important
Mm.
than catering to abusive relationships. But
Mm.
I don't think I would have gotten there if I hadn't had done the work to heal who I am, going inside, doing therapy, taking
Mhm.
accountability, right?
Mm.
These are all things part of self accountability, just like you said, radical self acceptance. You can accept a narcissist. My gosh, I'm around them all the time, but I don't want to be around them all the time, right? I don't want to live with
Mhm.
them. I don't want to breathe them. If you're at a job and your boss is a narcissist, you can deal with it. But if it's
Mhm.
constant and close proximity, your health and your mental and your physical health will suffer. So no,
Right.
I don't think you can.
I absolutely agree with your opinion. We can fall into patterns of, like denying it, rationalizing it, excusing it, all these kind of things that we do to try to live within it and make it okay. And also falling into those patterns of chasing that person that they once were, really understanding that that wasn't the real person. What you're with now is the real person, and that other person was the false, was the false person. That was all agenda based to get you to a place where, it's like, once they get you to a place where they feel like you can't really leave, maybe you buy a house with them or you have a child with them. Those are the moments where a toxic person will really become comfortable and start being their true selves. And we have to understand that that's the real person, not the other person that was there in the beginning, and that we have to stop chasing that. But yeah, we can live in denial. We can um, we can distract ourselves. We can try to use different kinds of ways to minimize betrayal, all of these things, but none of those are healthy for us. Just like you're saying, our bodies will feel it. If we stuff all this down, it will come out in some way.
Right.
Absolutely.
You
So
know, I
yeah,
like to use my ex as an example, even when I joke about it. What, a year and a half later, almost it'll be 2 years in the new year. I like to tell
uh-huh.
women, I'm like, I had a Jason Momoa. I had the hottest guy for a 40-year-old chick who was 20 years younger than me. But he drove me absolutely insane. In the short of it, the small amount of time we were together. Now, did I love the love bombing? Oh my gosh. I had heard recently that neurodivergent people don't pick up romance cues, thus they are attracted to narcissists and toxic people because love bombing is so loud. Kind of made sense to me. I
Mm.
was like, oh,
Mm.
interesting. Okay. Um, because that love bombing was like everything I wanted in a guy. It was like my knight in shining armor with long curly hair. But who he really was drove me absolutely insane. And what I learned in that, even now looking back, I got so uncomfortable that you have to get so uncomfortable that, granted we don't have a house together, everything that I own is myself. You got to get to that point of complete misery to climb
Mm.
yourself back up, to end something like that, whether it's a 30-year, 10-year, 3 months. And at the end of the day, like you're saying, it's like who they really are comes out, and the person they pretend to be was just to hook you. I mean, at your
Mm.
dream guy, your soulmate, my gosh, when I look at my life, do you know how many soulmates I've had? I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh, it's my soulmate. No, it's not your soulmate. you know?
Right, and what you're describing is repeated experience. So once the love bombing wears off and the mask comes off, it's a repeated experience of being devalued and
Mhm.
criticized, held in contempt, ignored, betrayed, um, all of those kind of things. And maybe if something like that happens just one time, it won't have lasting psychological impact on you. But this is repeated, like repeated patterns
Multiple.
in these relationships. It just repeats itself all the time. So I also have a question about the discard. We've talked about the discard and toxic relationships and narcissistic relationships. Can you just briefly explain what it means to be discarded when you're in a relationship with a narcissistic person?
Yeah, you're no longer valuable. You're no longer
Mm.
boosting their ego. You're no longer giving them free things. Whatever it is that you do to the narcissist, if you stop doing that, oh, better yet, the minute you put up boundaries, you're out.
Um,
The minute you put up
mhm.
boundaries, the minute you
Right,
express, "Hey, I'm not okay with this," and do something about it, you're gone. You're discarded.
right. So it's a form of punishment,
It
right?
really is. It really
It's a
is.
form of punishment for sure. And then oftentimes you'll be discarded, and then they'll let you come back. Because you're made to feel like you're the one who did something wrong, right? So then you're like, "Oh my gosh, did I really hurt them that much? I'm so sorry." Because you're like the empathic person or empathetic
Right.
person.
Right.
So then you try to, they have this way of making you feel so much to blame for everything that's gone wrong. Then you kind of clamor and try to make up for it. So then they take you back, even though you're a piece of shit. They take you back, they'll find it in their heart, and then this whole cycle will repeat itself.
Repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I use my ex for a great example because I'll tell you, my discard with him came out of nowhere. And as a narcissist, they like to ruin events. I was on an event in Vermont. When I had gotten back, it was, I'm leaving you. There was no fight. There was nothing. It was, I'm out. And so when I got home, I was really upset. But you know what I did? I was like, screw it. He's in his 20s. Like, it's 6 months, whatever, move on with your life. And so I made the mistake of saying, hey, there's an item I had said you could have. And I'm very much a woman of my word. I'm like, I said you could have it, you could have it. Well, then he wanted to talk. And the conversation was very like, oh, it was so bad. I look back at that situation and it's like probably like my greatest embarrassment and achievement all in one. Got the young guy that's Jason Momoa, and it was a full blown enmeshed narcissist. It's like, oh, God. But where my second discard came, which was immediately, is because I didn't take the bait from the first hook again. So he came back and it was like, I do want to be with you. I do love you. And I looked at him and I'm like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you at all. So again, a boundary, right? I placed a boundary. And then within another 2 weeks, I was discarded for the final time because I was no longer of value. I was no longer meeting their needs. And so therefore I was a useless object.
Right.
So
And you said there was nothing that really happened before that first discard. Well, I would wonder if what had happened that prompted the discard was you independently going off on a trip to have fun with somebody else.
yeah,
That's
probably.
Yeah, that's something that is frowned upon, right? Because your world
Oh,
needs to
right.
revolve around
Yeah,
them, just as
right.
their world. You're there to serve them, not go have fun and have a life for yourself. Why would you do that?
Right. No, it's absolutely true. And that is it. When you get independent, they don't like it.
No,
If you
nope.
if you
Well,
show any sign that you don't need them, oh, it. And again, narcissists come from the same trauma as an empath. We just took different roads. The empath doesn't wish that on their worst enemy. The narcissist is hanging on to anger from childhood and chaos. And so it really is an ego thing, right? That's a blow to the ego.
yes.
They're very fragile. You take and I tell people they don't want a weak person. If you're with a narcissist right now, it's because you have something to offer. They have a fragile
Mm,
ego. They don't have anything. They have no sense of identity. You do. And if you have a sense of identity, they want that.
right. So you just said one of the one of the traits of a narcissistic person is a really poor sense of self, like a poor understanding of who they are themselves. So they look to other people. They look outside of themselves to help them look good, right? They like
Right?
having a, a family, right? Because that helps them to look good in
Right.
society. They like having a beautiful wife. They like having a successful wife. They like them having children who do great things because they see them as property, and they see them as extensions of, they are extensions of themselves rather than their own human beings. So as long as the family is feeling acting in that capacity, and you know filling that void for the narcissist, then absolutely they're totally on board with all of that. It's when any of them try to be their own person, advocate for themselves, have boundaries, expect some loving kindness, nurturing in their relationship, and then speak out when they don't get it. That's when, like what you're saying, that's when things start to go wrong. So, uh, one of the viewer questions that I do want to get to has to do with this discard. Okay, so the viewer says, I know about toxic relationships. I've educated myself. I've done a lot of work on myself as an adult. Even so, I still feel incredibly hurt when I get discarded by unhealthy family members or by others. So, and she says it makes me feel disposable, like I'm garbage. Um, how do I not feel this?
So to not feel like a disposable person, you've got to stop putting yourself as a disposable person. I went
Mm-hmm.
through the same thing. I felt, and we're talking hundreds of people. We're not talking two lovers or a family member. We're talking most of
Mm-hmm.
my relationships, I was
Mm-hmm.
discarded. Um, that's a self-esteem thing, right? You're going to have to find inside of you, whether you look in the mirror every day and you say the simple words I do, you are worth enough. You are worthy enough for love and a quality of life. You have to find a way to build up your self-esteem. When you build up your self-esteem and your confidence, you will no longer be a disposable person to these people. I get discarded still because
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to get away from toxic and narcissists. They exist everywhere. But now, instead of being hyper vigilant in trying to please this person, I'm like, I could care less. My self-worth, my value, who I am as a person is more important to me than how I look to a narcissist. But that also took an automobile accident, a near-death experience, and realizing life is too short to waste on pleasing these people. But for this viewer, you have to find that within yourself. The minute you stop wanting to be discarded and that you're disposable, you're not going to be. And when they do discard you, you just wave to them. See you later. Goodbye. Like you just, and I wasn't always that way. I mean, you know that. You've known me for a while. I was a mess.
Uh-huh.
But you have to find, people might ask, how do you find self-esteem? Do the things you love, right? Like my thing is horses. I have a breeding program. I have over 20 head of horses. I ride horses. I pack.
Mm-hmm.
I do art. I do things to build myself up, right? And if you build yourself up, you'll see results.
Mm. Yes. And again, like I was talking about before earlier in this show, always remembering that's about them. That's not about you. Because it's so easy to slip right into that personalizing it, like slip into some of our own old patterns of not good enough and whatnot. So what you're talking about is really focusing and being in that place of I am enough. I am
Yeah.
worthy of respect, love, and good treatment. And if they choose to not treat me in a good way, that's all about their own lack of, lack of self worth. That's all
Right.
about their own shame.
Right.
So, and when we start speaking the truth, when we start having good boundaries, when we start um, standing up for ourselves again, people who have narcissistic traits or people who are toxic, they don't like that. And,
No.
and that's when those behaviors like the discard come. So you have really separated yourself as much as possible from those people that have been a part of your life who had done the discarding. Is that correct?
Right. Right. One of the things that like I had mentioned, narcissists like people that have something, that if you're a strong person, you're independent, you're financially
Mm-hmm.
successful, you know where they get you? They know that you aren't fully happy with yourself. So they come
Mm-hmm.
in with their love bombing tactics and promise you the world. I promise you, if you build up your confidence on all assets, they won't even be attracted to you anymore. You won't even get
Mm-hmm.
them. I mean, it's
Right.
it's it's crazy. A year and a half later, they don't even bother with me. They're afraid. They're like, when you're that strong, they are actually terrified of you. And in the few encounters that I've had with narcissists this summer with work, they were shocked. They did not know how to deal with me. But if you are not happy, when does a narcissist come into your life? When you're weak, right?
When
When
you're
you're
vulnerable.
sensitive, when you're vulnerable, right? I had a knee
Yes.
injury with the one boyfriend. Then the young guy came in after the breakup of the said 3.5-year narcissist. They come in like a thief in the night. But if you're strong and you're capable, they want nothing to do with you.
Right. They prosper on your vulnerabilities, and
Yeah.
they amplify those kind of parts of you. So the last few shows that we've done, Ash, I have ended the shows by reading passages that you've written on your social media. I love your writings. I just love them. So I know you're busy, so I took the liberty of stalking you on Instagram. So your Instagram page is Wild Spirit, and it's W1LDSPIRIT. So I went on Instagram and I looked at some of your writings, and I'd like to read this one to close out our show today. So I quote you: "It's the simplest aspects that I value and love. Curving to my 1 year mark, where I sustained a life-altering crash, I sutured my soul and forgave the souls who have detoured in their own life to try to destroy mine. And I stand in this land with this incredible herd, with my brood mares and stallion, and the love and affection of mules and my Mustang, and I think I may come from turmoil and chaos, but after the storm comes the remarkable sunset. I am blessed." I love
Yeah.
this passage that you did, because it speaks to the silver lining that I mentioned in my introduction of you. That you're really talking about, despite all of this adversity in your life, you are blessed, and there's a remarkable sunset at the end of this. So I really appreciate that kind of inspiration and perspective. So I feel that way myself. I appreciate everything I've gone through, because it's really promoted my own growth and expansion. And I'm also grateful even for the challenges today. So is there anything you'd like to say before we're finished up today?
No, I think you nailed it right there. I think if people
Yeah.
really want the pursuit of happiness, find one thing that you're blessed for each and
Oh.
every day. That you're grateful for, whether it's a child or a cat or anything in your life, that you can find gratitude even through the suffering. That one twinge of hope will get you through.
Oh. Well, thank you for that. That's a perfect way to end our show. And thank you so much for being here with me again. I love our discussions. We did not get to all our viewer questions, but maybe we'll do that on a different day. So thank you for being here today. And thank you, everybody who's taken the time to listen to the show. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm sending love to every single one of you. So this has been Talks with Tracy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the